The jungle screamed with life as Zara's world turned upside down. Metal shrieked against stone. Sparks flew like dying stars, and the acrid smell of burning fuel filled her lungs. Through the cracked viewport of her research vessel, she watched. Trees rushed past in a blur of green and brown before everything went black. She awoke to silence, not the peaceful quiet of her homeworld's crystal caves, but the heavy, waiting silence of a predator holding its breath. Her head throbbed, and when she touched her temple, her fingers came away wet with purple blood. The ship's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the twisted remains of her cabin. Zara tried to stand and immediately collapsed, her right leg bent at an wrong angle, sending waves of agony through her body. The calm system sparked and died as she reached for it. No distress signal, no rescue beacon, no connection to her research team who had been exploring the northern hemisphere. Of this uncharted world, she was alone. The sound of groaning metal made her look up. A crack spread across the hull above her head, and she could hear something large moving outside, something that breathed heavily and scraped claws against the ship's exterior. Her people had been warned about the indigenous predators on this planet, creatures the humans called Vex, apex hunters with intelligence and malice. Zara's luminescent markings, normally a soft blue glow along her arms and neck, flickered with fear. She pressed her hands against them, trying to dim the light. On her homeworld, bioluminescence was beautiful, a sign of health and emotion. Here, it would make her a beacon for every hungry thing. In the jungle, a shadow passed by the damaged viewport. Then another. The breathing grew louder. That's when she heard the blast. The sharp crack of an energy weapon echoed through the jungle, followed by a roar of pain and anger. Heavy footsteps crashed through the underbrush, moving away from her ship. Then came a human voice, rough and tired. "Yeah, that's right. Keep running, you ugly bastard." Zara held her breath. She had studied human languages as part of her xenobiology training, but she had never met one in person. Her people and humanity had only established contact 5 years ago, and interactions were still formal, diplomatic. She knew humans were smaller than her species, more fragile, but supposedly fierce when threatened. "Hello," the voice was closer now, cautious. "I saw your ship come down. Anyone alive in there?" She tried to answer, but only managed a weak cough. Footsteps approached the hull, and she heard the human testing the integrity of the twisted metal. "I'm coming in," he called. "Don't shoot me, okay? I'm here to help." The emergency hatch groaned as strong hands forced it open. Dim light spilled into the cabin, and Zara saw him for the first time. He was indeed smaller than her people, but broader through the shoulders. With sun-darkened skin and concerned brown eyes, his dark hair was longer than regulation length, and his clothes were patched and worn. Most surprisingly, he moved without the careful formality she had expected from their diplomatic exchanges. "Jesus," he breathed, seeing her crumpled in the wreckage. "You're hurt bad." Marcus, though she didn't know his name yet, approached slowly, his hands visible and empty. He had seen enough injured people to recognize shock and potential spinal damage. The alien woman was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with pale purple skin marked by flowing patterns that seemed to pulse with their own light. Her silver hair was matted with blood, and her large violet eyes tracked his every movement with wary intelligence. "I'm Marcus," he said softly, the way he would speak to a frightened animal. "I'm human. I crashed here 3 months ago. I know this planet isn't safe, but I have shelter. Can you understand me?" Zara nodded slightly. "Zara," she whispered in accented but clear standard. "I understand. My leg. I see it." Marcus knelt beside her, carefully avoiding the sparking electronics. "I'm going to check you over, okay? I won't hurt you, but I need to know how badly you're injured before I move you." His hands were gentle but sure as he examined her. "Injuries. A broken leg, definitely. Possible concussion, cuts and bruises, but nothing that seemed life-threatening if treated quickly." What worried him more was the way her strange markings flickered and dimmed. He didn't know enough about her species to understand what that meant, but instinct told him it wasn't good. "The creatures outside," Zara managed. "Are they gone? For now. But they'll be back, especially once they catch your scent. We need to move." "I cannot walk." Marcus studied her face. noting the pain she was trying to hide and the way she struggled to stay conscious. "Then I'll carry you." Before she could protest, he was sliding his arms beneath her, lifting with the careful strength of someone who had moved injured people before. She was lighter than he expected, but taller, her head coming to rest against his shoulder as he carried her from the wreckage. "My research," she whispered weakly. "The data cores, forget them. Nothing in there is worth your life." The jungle pressed close around them as Marcus made his way through paths only he could see. Zara drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of his steady heartbeat and the sure way he navigated the dangerous terrain. Once, she heard the distant roar of something large and hungry, but Marcus just held her closer and kept walking. His shelter was a natural cave reinforced with salvaged materials. From his own crashed ship, a small fire burned near the entrance, and she could see supplies stacked neatly against the walls. It was rough but clean, the home of someone who had learned to survive in impossible circumstances. Marcus laid her gently on a makeshift bed of soft materials. "I'm going to set your leg," he told her. "It's going to hurt." Zara gripped his hand. As he worked, her luminescent markings flaring bright with pain before settling into a steady, soft glow. When he finished, she was breathing hard but alert. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus met her eyes, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was something in that silence, a recognition that went deeper than species or language. Two souls, lost and alone, finding each other in the vast darkness between the stars. "Rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow we figure out how to keep you alive." As Zara drifted toward sleep, she felt safer than she had since the crash. The human's presence was warm and solid beside her, and for the first time since leaving her homeworld, she wasn't alone. Outside, the jungle settled into its nocturnal rhythm, and somewhere in the darkness, predators prowled. But in the small circle of firelight, two beings from different worlds began the delicate dance of trust that would change both their lives forever. 3 days passed in a haze of pain and gentle care. Zara woke each morning to find Marcus already awake, tending the fire or preparing food with quiet efficiency. He had fashioned a crude but effective splint for her leg using materials from both their crashed ships, and he changed her bandages twice daily with hands that were surprisingly gentle for their obvious strength. "Kithara," she said on the second morning, pointing to the strange fruit he was preparing for her breakfast. "Kithara?" Marcus repeated carefully, his accent making the words sound rougher but not unpleasant. Zara nodded, then pointed to the similar earth fruit he was cutting for himself. "What do you call this?" "Apple," he said simply. She tried the word, her tongue struggling with the short, sharp syllables. "Appel. Your language is hard." "Sharp sounds." Marcus smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. "Yeah, English isn't the prettiest language in the galaxy. Your people's words sound like music." "Villani," she said softly, the word carrying layers of meaning he couldn't grasp. "It means language of the heart. What we speak when we are, how do you say, safe? With those we trust, intimate," Marcus supplied, and something in his voice made her markings glow a little brighter. Each day brought small discoveries. Marcus learned that the patterns of light beneath her skin responded to her emotions, bright when she was in pain, soft blue when she was content, and a warm golden hue when she laughed at his clumsy attempts at her language. Zara discovered that humans expressed emotion through micro-expressions she was learning to read, and that Marcus had a habit of humming old Earth songs while he worked. "Tell me about your world," Marcus said on the fourth evening as they shared another simple meal by the fire. Her leg was healing well, and she could sit up without dizzy spells now. "Thesara," Zara said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "It is, how do you say, when crystal grows in caves, Giatis?" "Yes, but more. Our cities grow like crystal formations in vast caverns. The walls sing with resonance, and every surface holds light that our people have touched. At night, the entire city glows like stars fell to ground." Her markings pulsed in harmony with her words, creating patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as expressions of deep emotion. "It sounds beautiful." It was. The light beneath her skin dimmed. "I studied life forms. Biology, my sister Nira always said I spent too much time with specimens, and not enough with people. Where is she now? Zara's markings flickered and went almost dark. The plague, 3 cycles ago. Many of our young died before we found cure. That is why I came here, to study new organisms, find new medicines. But now, Marcus reached out without thinking, covering her hand with his. I'm sorry, I know what it's like to lose someone you love. Her skin was warm beneath his touch, and where their hands connected, her markings began to glow again, not with sadness this time, but with something softer. You have lost someone too. It wasn't a question. Marcus stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. Elena. We were going to be married. She was a medic, working in the outer colonies. Pirates hit her station 2 years ago. This is why you are here, alone on dangerous world. Marcus's laugh was bitter. I volunteered for every suicide mission I could find after that. This was supposed to be a simple supply run to a research station. Equipment malfunction brought me down instead. He looked at their joined hands. Maybe the universe has a sense of humor. How do you mean? Sending me someone else to protect when I couldn't protect her? Zara's markings flared bright at his words, and she squeezed his hand. I do not need protection. Marcus of Earth. I need Villani, companion, friend. Friends, he repeated, but the way he said it carried weight beyond the simple word. On the 5th day, Zara insisted on helping with their daily tasks despite Marcus's protests. She couldn't walk far on her injured leg, but she could prepare food and tend the fire while he hunted and gathered supplies. Working together created an easy rhythm between them, and Marcus found himself looking forward to returning to the cave each evening. Your turn, Zara said that night, settling beside him as they ate. Tell me of Earth. Cities of metal and glass reaching toward the sky, Marcus said, unconsciously mimicking her storytelling cadence. Oceans so vast you can't see the other. Sighed. My home was in mountains covered with trees that changed colors with the seasons. Seasons, the world grows cold and warm in cycles. In autumn, the cooling time, leaves turn red and gold before falling like snow. Zara's markings swirled with fascination. On the Sara, temperature never changes, always perfect, always the same, but your world lives and dies and lives again. Something like that. Marcus found himself studying the play of light across her features. It's beautiful in its own way, violent sometimes, but beautiful, like you, she said quietly. Their eyes met across the small fire, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. I'm not beautiful, Zara. I'm just a guy who fixes things for a living. You fix more than machines, she said, her markings pulsing in slow, hypnotic waves. You fixed my fear. You fixed my loneliness. You fixed the broken pieces in my heart. I did not know were bleeding. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with possibility. Marcus reached up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face, and her markings flared at his touch. Zara, a distant howl echoed through the jungle, followed by answering calls. The moment shattered as both of them tensed, remembering the dangers that surrounded their small sanctuary. Vex pack, Marcus said, already reaching for his weapon. They're hunting. Zara struggled to stand, her markings now blazing with protective instinct rather than softer emotions. They are drawn to light. My light. Then we'll deal with it. Marcus helped her settle back down, his hand lingering on her shoulder. Together, as the howls grew closer, Zara realized that somewhere in the past 5 days, everything had changed. The human beside her was no longer just her rescuer or even her friend. He was becoming something more precious and more dangerous than either of them had expected. And tomorrow, she would have to decide if she was brave enough to let him know. The morning brought an unnatural stillness to the jungle. Even the usual chorus of alien birds had fallen silent, leaving only the soft crackling of their fire and the whisper of wind. Through the canopy above, Marcus checked his weapon for the 3rd time while Zara tested her weight on her healing leg, wincing but managing a few steps. The Vex pack moved on, Marcus said, though his voice carried doubt. Tracks head north toward the river. Zara's markings flickered with unease. Or, they circle back. My people have stories of hunters who think like this, appear to leave, then strike when prey believes it is safe. Your people know about the Vex, not these creatures specifically, but she gestured to her glowing skin. We evolved alongside. Predators who hunted by light. Those who survived learned to control their radiance, or to use it as weapon when cornered. Marcus turned from his surveillance of the jungle entrance to study her face. Weapon, I have never tried. It is instinctive. Response, when Nira and I were children, we played hide-and-seek in the crystal caves. Once, I became lost in deep passages where echo serpents nested. When one struck at me, my markings blazed so bright it fled screaming. But you don't know if you could. Do it again. Zara's expression was troubled. The elders say such abilities come from the heart, not the mind, from love or fear so strong it overwhelms conscious thought. Something in her tone made Marcus step closer. What kind of love? She met his eyes, and her markings began to pulse in that slow, hypnotic rhythm he was learning to associate with her deeper emotions, the kind that makes one willing to fight monsters. The moments stretched between them, heavy with implication, until a sharp crack from the jungle made them both freeze. Marcus raised his weapon while Zara limped to his side, her skin already beginning to glow with defensive light. That was too close, Marcus murmured. We need to. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Vex creatures erupted from the underbrush with coordinated precision, their black carapaces gleaming and mandibles clicking in anticipation. Marcus fired twice, dropping the first beast, but the second was already leaping toward them with claws extended. Down, he shouted, tackling Zara to the ground as the creature sailed over their heads. It landed badly, sliding across the cave floor, but recovered quickly and spun to face them, with predatory intelligence gleaming in its multifaceted eyes. The third Vex had circled around to block their escape route. Marcus tried to bring his weapon to bear, but the creature moved with liquid grace, always staying just outside his firing arc while its packmates closed in. Marcus. Zara's voice was strained with pain and effort as she struggled to rise on her injured leg. The nearest Vex pounced, and Marcus threw himself sideways, rolling across rough stone. His weapon skittered away into the shadows, and suddenly he was facing 3 apex predators with nothing but a combat knife and rapidly fading options. That's when Zara screamed, not in fear, but in fury, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her throat. Her markings exploded into brilliant radiance, transforming her into a living constellation. The light wasn't just bright. It pulsed with patterns that seemed to bypass the rational mind and strike directly at primal fears. The Vex stopped mid-attack, their predatory confidence replaced by confusion and growing terror. The creatures that had evolved to hunt in perpetual twilight found themselves facing something their instincts couldn't process, prey that had become a star. Nivalani Corvish, Zara shouted in her native tongue, and Marcus didn't need translation to understand the protective fury in her voice. The light intensified until he had to shield his eyes, and when it reached its peak, she thrust her hands forward. The beam of concentrated radiance struck the lead Vex center mass, lifting the creature off its feet and hurling it against the cave wall with a wet crunch. The other 2 Vex broke and ran, their nerves shattered by what they had witnessed. Zara swayed and would have collapsed if Marcus hadn't caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist as her markings slowly dimmed to their normal soft glow. She was breathing hard, her skin warm to the touch, and when she looked up at him, her eyes held a vulnerability that made his heart skip. You saved my life, he said quietly. You saved mine first, she whispered back. They stood there in the aftermath of violence, holding each other while adrenaline slowly faded from their systems. Marcus became acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, her hands on his chest, his arms around her waist, the way she fit against him despite their physical differences. Zara, he began, but she silenced him by reaching up to trace the line of his jaw with trembling fingers. Do not speak, she said softly. Not yet. Let me. Her touch was electric, sending shivers through him that had nothing to do with fear. When she rose on her toes to bring their faces level, Marcus stopped thinking altogether. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered without words. Her lips were soft and warm, and when she sighed against his mouth, he felt something inside his chest crack open like an egg. This is dangerous, he murmured when they broke apart, though he made no move to release her. Yes, she agreed, her markings now pulsing with a golden radiance he had never seen before. My people and yours, we are so different. This could never work in the real world. But we're not in the real world, Marcus said, stroking her silver hair. We're here, in this impossible place, keeping each other alive. And when rescue comes, he was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the soft glow of her skin. Then we figure it out. Together. Zara's smile was radiant enough to put her bioluminescence to shame. Together, she repeated, and when she kissed him again, Marcus tasted hope and starlight, and the promise of something he had thought lost forever, outside. The jungle was already beginning to stir back to life, but neither of them cared. They had found something worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth the risk of having their hearts broken when the universe inevitably tried to tear them apart. For now, love was enough. The first drops of rain fell like bullets against the cave entrance, each one carrying the promise of something far worse to come. Marcus had lived on this planet long enough to recognize the signs. The way the air pressure dropped, how even the most aggressive predators sought shelter, the unnatural green tint to the darkening sky. Storm season, he said grimly, watching the wind bend trees nearly horizontal. These can last for days. Zara limped to his side, her markings flickering, with concern as she observed the rapidly deteriorating weather. Will we be safe here? As if in answer to her question, a massive gust of wind drove rain horizontally into their shelter, dousing their fire and soaking them both in seconds. Lightning split the sky with a crack that seemed to shake the very foundations of the planet. Not safe enough, Marcus said, already gathering their essential supplies. There's a deeper chamber system further back. I've been meaning to explore it, but you had no reason to go deeper underground, Zara finished, understanding immediately. When you were alone, isolation was sometimes preferable to the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped. They moved quickly through the cave passages, Marcus leading with a small light while Zara's natural luminescence provided backup illumination. Her leg was much stronger now, though she still favored it slightly. The deeper they went, the more the sound of the storm became a distant rumble rather than an immediate threat. Here, Marcus said, stopping at a natural chamber larger than their previous shelter. The walls were smooth stone, carved by millennia of water flow, and the ceiling was high enough that their light couldn't reach it. More importantly, it was completely dry. It's beautiful, Zara whispered, her voice echoing softly. Her markings cast dancing patterns on the walls, creating an almost magical atmosphere, like the singing caves of home, but different, wilder. Marcus began setting up their temporary camp while Zara explored the chamber, running her hands along the stone walls with obvious fascination. When he looked up from arranging their bedding, he found her standing with her back to him, her entire form outlined in soft radiance. Second thoughts? He asked quietly. She turned, and in the gentle light of her bioluminescence, her expression was vulnerable but determined. Many thoughts, but not second ones. The storm outside intensified, and with it came a different kind of electricity between them. They were completely cut off from the outside world now, in a space that felt removed from time and consequence. When Zara moved closer to help him arrange their supplies, every casual touch seemed charged with significance. Tell me about Elena, she said suddenly as they settled beside each other on the makeshift bedding. I want to understand who she was to you. Marcus was quiet for so long that Zara began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant with memory. She was light. That's the word that always comes to mind. She had this way of making everyone around her feel like they mattered. When she walked into a room, it was like someone had turned up the brightness. He paused, studying Zara's face in the soft glow. She would have liked you, would have been fascinated by your biology, your culture. She always said the universe was too big for humans to be alone in it. You loved her very much. I did, but Marcus reached out to trace one of the luminescent patterns on Zara's arm, marveling at the way it brightened under his touch. What I feel for you is different. Elena and I grew up together, fell in love gradually. This is like being struck by lightning. Zara's markings pulsed in response to his words. On the Sara, we have concept called Thyara, the heart spark, that ignites between souls across impossible distances. My parents told me it was myth. Beautiful story for children. And now I think perhaps myths exist because some truths are too large for ordinary words. Thunder crashed overhead, and instinctively they moved closer together. The chamber suddenly felt more intimate, more private, as if the storm had sealed them away from everything else in the universe. I'm scared, Zara admitted quietly, of the storm, of this ending, of rescue ships coming and taking us back to our separate worlds, of losing this feeling before I understand what it means. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking across the delicate patterns of light beneath her skin. Then don't let it end. Not tonight. When he kissed her this time, there was nothing tentative about it. Zara responded with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. Her markings blazed brighter, painting them both in golden radiance. Korvani Thyara. She whispered against his lips. Tel Maravi Nai. What does that mean? Heart spark burning bright. You are my chosen light. She smiled, and it was radiant. It is what my people say when we give our hearts completely. Marcus felt something profound shift inside his chest. I love you too. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning the geography of each other's bodies while the storm raged overhead. Zara's bioluminescence responded to every touch, every kiss, creating a light show that was uniquely theirs. Marcus discovered that the patterns changed with her emotions, flowing like water when she was aroused, flaring like stars when she reached climax, settling into steady pulses as she lay curled against his chest afterward. No one has ever seen me like this, she murmured drowsily. My people, we dim our lights during intimacy. It is considered too revealing, too vulnerable. You're beautiful, Marcus said simply. All of you, every part. As the storm continued its assault on the world above, they talked through the night, sharing stories of their childhoods, their fears, their dreams for a future that seemed increasingly impossible the more they wanted it. When the ships come, Zara said near dawn, they will expect me to return to my research, to find the cure I came here to discover, and they'll expect me to report back to my commanding officers, assuming I still have a career after being stranded this long. So we pretend this never happened. Marcus was quiet, stroking her hair as she lay against his shoulder. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to weaken, and with the approaching dawn came the terrible weight of reality. Or, he said carefully, we decide that some things are worth fighting for. Zara lifted her head to look at him, her markings bright with hope and determination. The frontier worlds, places where humans and my people work together, wherein engineer and a xenobiologist might find common ground. Are you suggesting we run away together? I am suggesting we run toward something together, as if summoned by their words. A new sound cut through the dying storm, the distant whine of atmospheric engines, rescue ships, finally tracking their emergency beacons. Marcus and Zara looked at each other, both knowing that, in a matter of hours, their impossible paradise would be invaded by duty, expectation, and the vast complications of interstellar politics. But, in that moment, holding each other in their cave of light, they made a choice that would change both their worlds forever. The rescue ships descended through the clearing skies like metallic angels, their hulls gleaming with the promise of civilization and safety. Marcus and Zara emerged from the cave system hand in hand, squinting in the sudden brightness as three vessels settled onto the jungle floor with carefully controlled thrust burns. Two of the ships bore the elegant, crystalline design aesthetic of Zara's people, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to sing in harmony with the wind. The third was purely human, military, angular, functional, built for war rather than beauty. Marcus felt Zara's hand tighten in his as figures began emerging from the airlocks. Research team leader Zarade Luminarch called a tall figure from the nearest Thasaran ship, his skin bearing the deep purple markings of high rank. We have searched for 17 rotations. Your family feared you lost. From the human vessel came a woman in admiral's stripes, her expression stern with military efficiency. Engineer Marcus Chen 7, you've been listed as missing in action for For months, Command wants a full debrief immediately. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances, both recognizing a moment of choice that had finally arrived. The weight of expectation, duty, and a civilization's worth of protocol bore down on them. Like gravity. Honored cousin, Zara said formally, addressing the Thasaran official while her markings remained carefully controlled. I am grateful for your efforts. However, my research here is not yet complete. Research, the official's bioluminescent patterns flickered with confusion. Child, you were investigating botanical specimens for pharmaceutical development. Surely anything of value can be gathered and analyzed in proper laboratory conditions. Begging your pardon, sir, Marcus interjected, but the most valuable thing discovered on this planet can't be gathered. The human admiral stepped forward, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Engineer, you'll report for immediate medical evaluation and debriefing. Whatever you think you've found here, I assure you it can be properly documented through official channels. Actually, Zara said, her voice growing stronger, it cannot. She turned to Marcus, and in full view of both rescue parties, her markings blazed with golden radiance as she rose on her toes to kiss him. The bioluminescent display was impossible to misinterpret. Even the humans could recognize the biological indicators of deep emotional bonding. The silence that followed was deafening. This is highly irregular, the Thasaran official sputtered, his own markings flashing through what Marcus was learning to recognize as shock and disapproval. Interspecies romantic attachment it has never been. The biological compatibility alone is perfectly viable, Zara said calmly, as I have discovered through extensive personal research. The human admiral's expression could have frozen plasma. Engineer, you're clearly suffering from some form of psychological trauma. Extended isolation can cause someone to realize what actually matters. Marcus interrupted, keeping his arm firmly around Zara's waist. I'm resigning my commission, Admiral. You can't resign in the field, son. That's not how military service works. Then court-martial me. Before anyone could respond, the jungle erupted. The Vex pack that had been stalking them for days chose that moment to make their final assault. Drawn perhaps by the noise and energy signatures of the ships, a dozen of the creatures burst from the tree line with coordinated precision, their black carapaces gleaming and mandibles clicking with predatory hunger. Chaos erupted as security teams from both rays. Q ships opened fire, but the Vex had learned to adapt to energy weapons. They scattered and regrouped with terrifying intelligence, using the ships themselves as cover while they pressed their attack. The cave, Marcus shouted, pulling Zara toward their former shelter as plasma bolts sizzled through the air around them. But Zara had stopped moving. Her markings were blazing with protective fury, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly over the sounds of battle. Korvani Nai, Thyaravel Maradi. Marcus didn't need translation. He could hear the love and determination in every syllable. Zara was preparing to make her stand, not just against the Vex, but for their right to choose their own destiny. Together, he said, raising the weapon he'd retrieved from his gear. Together. She agreed. They fought as one, Marcus's precise shots coordinating with Zara's devastating light attacks to clear a path through the pack. Her bioluminescence had evolved into something beyond mere defense. It became a weapon of pure will, striking down any creature that threatened what they had built together. When the last Vex fell, the jungle seemed to exhale in relief. In the sudden quiet, Marcus and Zara stood surrounded by the aftermath of battle, still holding each other, still blazing with shared determination. The Thasaran official was the first to speak, his voice subdued. That was remarkable tactical coordination. Years of training couldn't have produced better results, the human admiral admitted grudgingly. Because it wasn't training, Zara said, her markings now pulsing in calm, steady waves. It was Thyara, heart spark, the bond that makes two souls stronger together than either could be alone. Marcus squeezed her hand. We're requesting asylum on Kepler Station, neutral territory. Joint human Thasaran operation. I hear they need good engineers and xenobiologists. Zara added with a smile. The officials exchanged glances, clearly recognizing a fait accompli when they saw one. 3 years later, observation deck of Kepler Station. offered a view of 3-star systems simultaneously, their light painting Aurora Zara's garden in shifting rainbows of color. Marcus found her there most evenings, tending to hybrid plants that shouldn't have been able to grow in the same soil, but somehow thrived under her care. The earth roses are blooming again, she called as he approached, her markings bright with contentment, and the siren's singing vines are harmonizing with the wind chimes I installed. Marcus replied, settling beside her on the bench they'd built together. I think your theory about sympathetic resonance is proving itself. Like U.S., Zara said, leaning against his shoulder as they watched ships from a dozen worlds dock and depart in the distance. Like us, Marcus agreed, pressing a kiss to her silver hair dot in the garden around them. Impossible hybrid flowers bloomed in defiance of biological law, proving that sometimes the most beautiful things grew not in spite of their differences, but because of them. And in the vast darkness between the stars, love had found a way to take root and flourish.